I appreciate it. I also appreciate seeing friends, which is, always an encouraging sort of thing to see people who know you a little bit anyway, and they're here. I've had a passion for the Kolob Canyons for over 50 years. I hate to admit that it took me a few years to actually go into the Kolob Canyons, primarily because we bought a new house in Cedar City and we were painting and we were trying to get the roof done and the yard done, and it seemed like there was never time to go see any of those things. But later I found that it's just absolutely maybe the most remarkable place on earth. In fact, I maybe just tell you one story. I was invited in 1994. I took my youngest son with too at that time. He was 14. And we went to Moscow. I gave a lecture. And I knew that Russians liked gifts, so I took a brochure of the about 200 copies I was able to get a hold of the national parks and monuments in the state of Utah. And it turned out the day before my lecture, I got to go see the crown jewels of the czars and others in Moscow. And when I was ready to present this little gift, I gave it to them and I said, I had the privilege of seeing the crown jewels of the czars, but I want you to know that I live among the crown jewels of Mother Nature. And then I passed it out. And they were quite impressed. I felt badly because I had only about 150 to 200 copies of it, and there were 600 in the audience. So that was but at least they got a flavor of what it's like. And I have truly had a passion to go to the Kolob. And I mean, as I say, I hate in my early years, younger years, that I drove by like 99.9% of the people do today. And it probably, if I was going to pick one place on Interstate 15 from California to Canada that you have to stop and see, it would be the Kolob Canyons. They are absolutely remarkable almost at any time of day. So anyway, I got very interested in that, and I hope this works now. We'll see. The early visitors would have been Native Americans. We don't know very much about that. There's a few inscriptions. I don't even know of one in the Kolob section of Zion National Park, but there are some in Zion National Park, and I've seen a few, but they're pretty rare. Native Americans, I don't think, really like to go there. The first real description we have came on actually the 13th of October of 1776, when Dominguez and Escalante were making their trip to California, never made it, turned south because of the snow, and they passed by that like we do on the freeway, except they were going a little slower. It just had horses, and they described it as an all mesa strewn land. So they could see these big mesas that isolated. It was a very strange country for them to see. But they were the first. The statue, by the way, of Father Escalante is west of Cedar City, and there's a campground area there now, and they've built a real nice campground, and there's about 10 or 8 or maybe 6 or 7 nice statues. You might go out to that canyon and see it. They're very nice. Anyway, the next person that we know of who came by the Kolob Canyons and looked was Jedediah Smith in September, and I didn't take the time to figure out the exact date because you wouldn't remember it anyway if I told you, but yeah, you could go read that. And he described the canyons as unwelcome appearance, detached hills on the east, that are somewhat higher. All right. By the way, people didn't have an idea of what somewhat higher is. I'll give you an example here in a few minutes, because they were thinking 200 or 300 feet instead of 2,000 feet, which is more likely what they are. Now, there are inscriptions in our area as early as 1826. I think this is the earliest one, and I'll tell you where it is. It's near the junction of the Santa Clara and the Virgin Rivers. If you know where all of the automobile places are, and you knew where the Maverick used to be, it's just above the Maverick on the hillside there. And this says LK 1826. And it's still there. It's quite a remarkable thing. I do not know if it's real or if someone put it in later, but it seemed very, very real when you go and see it. It hasn't changed a lot in the years that when I first was introduced to it. So there are some. I will tell you there are some around that are older. Let's see. I'll remember in a second. Let's go on and see the next one. The first real descriptions came with the Mormon settlement of southern Utah in that first decade after their arrival. Parley P. Pratt had an expedition that went down in 1849, passed by. They established Fort Harmony, an Indian mission to talk with Indians in 1854 at Harmony. Wilford Woodruff actually took the time to walk up Taylor Creek, which is the main stream going down, to go fishing. He loved fishing, and everywhere he goes, Panguitch Lake, wherever Wilford Woodruff was, he always had his fishing gear along with. I mean, he loved fishing no matter where it was. I will say that I wrote about this 15 years ago, and I said Wilford Woodruff also stopped to do some rock rolling in the national park. It turns out that I found out that actually it was on the river next to New Harmony, and that he actually didn't roll the rocks inside of the national park, which is, I guess some people feel very happy about. But the Mormons love to roll rocks. Older people love to roll rocks. I suspect many of you probably still like to. I still like to roll rocks once in a while. I threw one off of a cliff I was at just to hear how long it took before I could hear the sound a little while ago out on Little Creek Mesa. Anyway, the first mention that I know of is Thomas Brown journal from those early expeditions in southern Utah. He's the first one to mention Kolob, but he didn't actually name the area the Kolob. We actually don't know we know where the name Kolob came from, but we don't know when they started to actually assign it to the place. Might have been Brown. I suspect it was early Mormons who said, hey, the meaning of Kolob, if you go to early Mormon scripture, is Kolob is nigh unto the throne of God. And I guess I don't disagree with that. And after you see it, you probably don't disagree with it either. And as a consequence, the name finally took hold. And I'll show you some things later. Why it took a little time. Maybe it's because they were just not wanting to use that name immediately. All right, they felt it, but they didn't want to use it immediately. When the Mormons, one of the early ventures into the actual interior came in 1859. We know about the Mountain Meadows Massacre in 1857, and John D. Lee and Philip Klingensmith were evading the law 2 years later, that shouldn't be a big surprise. I mean, you know, it took a while before they realized what actually had happened, and the government sent some people out to investigate, and of course they were looking for Lee and Klingensmith. And they were actually hiding out near Virgin, and decided they wanted to get lost, and so Lee and Klingensmith went up the what we now call the North Fork of the Virgin River. There, it's the stream that follows the Kolob Road, the Kolob Reservoir Road, and they went up that stream. And then, of course, you know, there are places where you wouldn't want to be in the stream, so you get up on the higher land above it. And then when they got to the area where the modern trails go down in Hop Valley, they didn't go down Hop Valley. I don't think they realized, you know, they had no idea basically what was there. They went left over into the what's called the Red Butte Wilderness area now. Which, by the way, I just barely, for the first time in my life, went to see last year. And it wasn't, well, because I wanted to see this signature if I could see it. It says 18, and there's possibly a 7, but I wanted to see it close up to actually see. Could be John D. Lee's son, John D. Lee. So I'm not sure exactly who put it in, but Lee was really there. That says J.D. Lee, 1870, but you know, you have to look at it carefully to see what happened. Maybe it's 50. But there's a crack in it too, so it wiped out one of the digits. So I don't know. Anyway, he lost, by the way, he lost his revolver on that trip. Left it behind. You know how we're used to doing that kind of stuff. We leave something behind and then you got to run back and get it. And he ran back and get it, but I guarantee you it was one of his most horrible days for physical exertion. He does have a journal that describes the day, but it's very confusing and you can't tell for sure exactly which way he went and how he went. But he ended up on the lower falls of the canyon coming out of the Kolob. In fact, he eventually stays there at that waterfall just east of New Harmony. Let's see. I spoke about Red Butte Wilderness, so you can see what was there. Last year I went to see it, and there was a big sand ridge on the west side, northwest side, I guess. And I decided to go see what it looked like when you got on top of the ridge. And that's the picture on the left. You're in those cliffs, the Red Butte cliffs. The main peak that you see that's called Red Butte is behind you, but looking down on the mesa below is Smith Mesa, that some of you may know about. And then, of course, you surely recognize the Pine Valley Mountains below. I mean, it was worth the trip. By the way, I didn't find the inscription. I got to go back one of these times. But the view was absolutely stunning to me to see. And it's not exactly in the Kolob, but it's in one of the 5 wilderness areas that are adjacent to the Kolob Canyons right now. The other thing is, I'm really a big arch fan, and I found a new arch. I just call it the giant elephant arch. I mean, this one is a giant. I mean, those cliffs are at least 1,000 feet high. You know, it's not a easy one. So even though I didn't find the John D. Lee signature, I did see that it's really a beautiful place. And even for an old man like me, it wasn't that bad of walking, because it was the hardest part. You had to go through some sand to get there, but I had 4-wheel drive and I was able to do that. And then the walk through the sand was not tough. but it was really, really nice. So this is Kolob country, nigh unto the gods. I mean, it's just incredible to see. Now, the first person that I know of who actually, since we had cameras early, but the first one to actually draw a picture was William Henry Jackson in 1867. In fact, I think the photos, the inscription was dated January 7th, 1867. And now some of you may know about William Henry Jackson. He ended up with the John Wesley Powell in the West and other places, and drew pictures, and was a famous individual in the establishment of trails in the United States, clear until he was 90. He died about 1944 or something like that. It's actually kind of he has an interesting life story. He had a girlfriend, I mean, not a girlfriend, they were actually probably engaged to be married in Connecticut or New Jersey, one of the two. And he was, they got into an argument, and then he said some things that he finally said, it was so bad, and I was so angry that I just knew immediately I had to leave, because she would never forgive me and I would live in misery there. And he had already started a photography business and painting in the East. And so he said, I'm going to go west. I mean, he's a young 20-year-old, 22 years old at the time, and just bam, left. And got a job, easy job, running cattle, I think, to the western United States. No, it wasn't easy. It was a terrible job, and he knew it. And then he was going to go to Montana and check see if he could find some gold or something, get rich. But on the way, they spent everything they earned with the people that they were working for. I don't know, probably for liquor and other things. Sugar is another thing that they would buy. And so he decided to go down to Salt Lake City instead. And when he got to Salt Lake City, he wired his dad in New York to send him enough money so he could go to California down the old Spanish Trail. So, and that's why I sort of was looking at him. But of course, by then, you didn't have to follow the trail exactly. You could actually go south of, instead of west of Cedar City, you could go south of Cedar City, Utah, and down where I-15 goes now, and see that country. And so he decided to go. And when he got to the Kolob, he was quite impressed, went up the canyon. He described the hills, by the way, maybe 400 or 500 feet high, the cliffs. They just had no, when you're from the East Coast in the 1860s, 1870s, you have no idea how, even the Spanish, when they first saw the Grand Canyon, they were talking 400 or 500 feet deep. Instead of 3,000 feet deep. It's just something you can't get a hold of unless you're around, or you actually drop a rope off with a stone on it to see how deep it is. Anyway, you have to admit, and you recognize it's clearly an image. By the way, Jackson's paintings and all the rest are in. Let me look and see which, I got to remember the name of the, Scotts Bluff. Yeah, Scotts Bluff National Monument somehow got a hold of all of the vast majority of William Henry Jackson's paintings and things. So if you're looking for something with William Henry Jackson, whatever it is, that's where you would go. Actually, we have one other place that he drew a picture of, which is quite remarkable, and I don't think I put it on this one, but when you go from the Virgin River up onto the Mormon Mesa on the way south, he drew a picture of that steep dugway. Well, steep dugway, it's over 1,000 feet in less than a mile. It's even hard for a four-wheeler to go up if you go out onto the Mormon. If you go from the Virgin River, it's called Halfway Wash, and goes up. And he drew a picture of that too on that same trip in 1867. The other thing I should just say about Jackson, and by the way, I gave an hour's talk in Santa Fe once on William Henry Jackson. So I mean, he's really a very interesting person. So if you want to learn some early history of the West, William Henry Jackson is one you want to see. Anyway, onward. I talked too long. The next person was Thomas Moran, who was actually hired by Powell to go down and draw pictures and do work with the Powell survey in the mostly Grand Canyon area. And on the way down, he stopped and took a picture. This one was probably the first published picture of anything in the Kolob section. And it's a very beautiful painting. He called it Colburn's Butte because the man with him was with the New York Times. His name was Colburn. And so he said, well, we'll just call it Colburn's Butte. But that name didn't stick, thank goodness. It was published in the Aldine magazine the next year, 1874. So people started becoming aware of it. Of course, you know, that magazine would have published the picture, and people say, wow, I'd love to go see that. And then, of course, it's 1874, and you think, how am I ever going to get there? And so most would have just said, it's a great thing to see. All right? And that would be basically what most of us would have done with lots of things. You know, there are great waterfalls and canyons and other places in the world we'd like to go visit, but of course, you know, some are in China, some are in Russia, some, you know, in other places. By the way, the best ones are still in your backyard. I've been in 40 countries in my lifetime, but I never expected that. And there's no place like home. And that's literally true. The surrounding areas, when you take the Grand Canyon, Bryce, and Zion, and the ones in Nevada and eastern Utah, we do live in the most remarkable place in the world. Well, enough for Colburn. Colburn, by the way, he's responsible. His one painting, I didn't put it here because it's on the Grand Canyon, but he had a painting of the Grand Canyon, which is still the thing that made the Grand Canyon famous. And it's still a very famous painting. So that's Colburn. Thomas Moran. We jump a little. The Mormons were, did some, but in 1917, a man by the name of Doug White decided to build a road from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City that would be inviting, that a tourist would go on. 1917, what, the automobile's 10 years old or something like that. You're starting to get a car. So there are reasons now, people have got opportunities, and so he wanted to be on the front row of that sort of thing, and he wanted to explore the area, and so he wanted to write a guide, and he got a guide in Cedar City. His name was Richard Thorley. He said, where would you suggest we go? He says, well, if I had a road that I could tell you to build, it would be a road up the Kolob Canyons, then down what we now call Timber Creek, and then up through Hop Valley and over to the rim of the Zion National Park. I mean, a tremendous road, but that's what he was proposing in 1917 to White. And had there been enough money and other things, not a war in between and a depression and some other things, we may have had a road that he described through the Kolob at that time. But of course, we didn't get the road until 1967, which was just a couple of years after we moved to Cedar City. So that was your first real access. I don't think many people went into the canyon, a few, and we'll see who a few of those are, but he did drive his car over to that section, but he went on the what we now call the Kolob Reservoir Road, but not from the south. He went from Cedar City down, and then when he got to Horse Pasture Flats, or the West Rim Trail, we now call it the West Rim Trail, he actually drove the car out far enough so they got it on the edge of the Zion National Park in 1917. It was called the Dork, the Plucky Dork. So it was interesting. I only mention it for Kolob because it was something that they were talking about as early as 1917 to build a road into the Kolob. Then you have a group of people, and these are the ones I don't know, but Taylor Creek settlements. And there are actually some cabins built. I think this is the Larson, Gustav Larson, Arthur Fife, and William R. Palmer. Any of you have descendants by any chance? No, I'm surprised in a way because they're all quite famous. William R. Palmer was a banker in Cedar City, I know. I don't know much about Gustav, I think was at early Dixie College and down in St. George, and I don't know very much about Fife. This is one thing I could still study, but it's not high on my list at my age. Anyway, there's still a cabin. The cabin business ended quickly, though. They were talking this during the Depression, so there was things they couldn't get out to it. And by 1937, it was a national monument, and then there was no chance for it to happen, which again is probably a good thing, at least for our generation. Now, one of the most important people to be involved in all of this was the pioneer geologist of northern Utah, or southern Utah and northern Arizona, Herbert Gregory. Gregory basically wrote the early geologic history of what we now call the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. You know, that 2 million acres. That's the country he got to travel. Fortunately, I got to get well acquainted with Gregory because when 1996, when they applied for when the National Monument was created, President Clinton decided he was going to have some money for people to actually do some things, and I did a simple $15,000. That was quite a bit of money in 1996. So extra. I got to study the life of Herbert Gregory in the Grand Staircase and what he did. So my wife still doesn't like me to go, but that's part of it. I just couldn't stop going because there were so many incredible things to see. But Gregory in 47 actually wrote the report, the geological report on what we now the Kolob, and he said there were two primary geologic features: the Hurricane Fault, which is on you see it as you drive up the freeway, Interstate 15, and then the Lavercan Creek was the primary reason why you get all of the erosion and these isolated peaks that we've talked about. maybe would like to read you what Gregory said. Well, if I can find it. Oh, here. Oh, that's not it. Well, maybe I can't find it. I thought I had it. Oh, it's right here. Never mind. Yes, Gregory wrote to the, his name was Earl Traeger. He's the acting assistant director of the National Park Service. The Park Service was created in 1916, so we're only 20 years into it. But this is what he said about the Kolob, and this rang ding dong, we got to do something with this. If only one spot in Utah and Arizona were available on as a platform for a lecture on the geology of the Colorado Plateau country, I think I would choose Canara Mountains, where the sedimentary series Kaibab to Wasatch is in sight. The Great Basin topography abuts against the plateau topography, and where the erosion, the faulting, and the volcanism characteristic of the plateau province could be discussed and illustrated with nearby examples. Now, he's talking about the Kolob. He said, if I'm going to pick one place that I could teach you the geology of the Colorado Plateau, it's the Kolob. And so it impressed people in the National Park Service, and that impressed President Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt, to declare it as a national monument. It should have been the Kolob National Monument, but of course, I think, well, I should just, I don't know why I did this, and I inserted this because we still have a name, Gregory Butte, and that's a poor picture, but when you get down the Timber Creek Trail to the stream, to the Lavercan Creek, and you walk over to the creek and look upstream, below the little riffle fall there, that's Gregory Butte in the background. So his name is in the Kolob. And I just added the other one just because if you walk 1 mile down the stream, there are petrified logs everywhere in the Lavercan Creek. And most people don't know that. They're actually the same level as the ones over on the southern end where you're used to thinking about the petrified wood in Zion National Park. But this is the Upper Canyon. This is what Gregory was looking at least from the east. This is from the, you can see the Pine Valley Mountains in the background, and you see this is what Lavercan Creek does to it. All right, and if you let it go long enough, guess what? It'll wipe out the entire ridge going along the fault line along. It will eventually be destroyed. I mean, it's eaten out on that side. If you get up on Smith Mesa and look to the other side, you see how much it's eating away. You know, every flood takes another 1 million tons of dirt down to the Colorado River, but it's, anyway, now we're to the place that I wanted to go. Okay, 1937, he declares Zion National Monument. Oh, we had one of those earlier. And so what were they earlier? So you got to get the chronology right, and then you'll understand. The first one was what we now call the main canyon, you know, the one we drive up into from where the visitor center is in Zion. You drive up, it was Makuntaweep, if I say it right, National Monument by Taft in 1909, almost 16,000 acres. It was just the Virgin River, the main canyon that you all see. Now remember, you can't have a tunnel above, that's not there yet. Okay, there's no eastern part of Zion National Park. You just have that little bit. Then we get our first Utah land grabbing national monument, Zion National Monument. They added 60,000 acres to include everything on the east side. So they decided we want to take all of that area, north, south, east, west of the main canyon. Get as much of it as they can. They added 60,000 acres, 4 times as much as they had originally. And Woodrow Wilson declared the Zion National Monument number 1. All right, that's why I got number 2 up there. Okay, and that was, as I say, a big land grab. We had a few of those. Well, we had Arches National Monument and Capitol Reef National Monument, and then President Lyndon Johnson, decided to add, 3 or 4 times. I don't remember the exact numbers. Maybe I wrote it down. Anyway, in Arches, Capitol Reef went in 1937, a national monument, and Arches went in 1938. But then it took 30 years before Johnson says, well, let's add a whole bunch. And then Johnson added 49,000 acres to Arches National Monument just before it became Arches National Park. And he added 215,000 acres to Capitol Reef National Monument just before it became Capitol Reef National Park. And they already had good examples here. Wilson added 60,000 acres in 1918 in Zion National Monument and then in 1919 it became a national park, one of the first the first 10 or 15 national parks in the country. So land grabbing is something that's not only done in Utah, but it's done. We have lots of good, excellent examples of land grabbing. So we grab all that land and throw it into the national monument ahead. That's what the Antiquities Act allows the president to do very easily. It also throws a lot of Utah lands, because Utah owns 1/9 of all of that area. And then in about 1990, maybe it was near 2000, Governor Levitt traded all of those lands for, guess what? You live on it now, I suspect. All of the land in South St. George was some of that traded lands. Everything down by the exit 2 on the end, that was all government land that we traded for. And there are many other places. So that was, by the way, I think one of the biggest land trade acts ever in the history of the United States is what Utah traded. They traded a couple of million acres. So we got acreage that's together. We live on Sitlin lands too. We got a Sitlin office just below our house. I mean, it's not very far away. Anyway, it's important to see that. But I mentioned one other thing. Before 1933, all of the parks and national monuments and stuff, wherever they happened to be with the Park Service, they didn't have a real BLM until the 30s, so it wasn't there. But there were other government agencies that owned it, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, we need to get it all into one place. And so Executive Order 6166 put every national monument into the National Park Service. A really good example was Cedar City. Cedar City wasn't quite a national monument, or Cedar Breaks, wasn't quite a national monument yet. And Roosevelt, they were fighting, the Forest Service said, we want it. They had quite a few national monuments. We want it, and it's the perfect place. It's right on the national forest, and if you've been up there, you know that. This executive order made it so that Cedar Breaks became the first national monument in Forest Service lands that wasn't, that went directly to the national park. Every previous national forest, national monument was done in the national forest, given to the national forest. Now, that wasn't all traded back until 1976 when they did the Alaska stuff. And I'm getting way off on this, but it's important to understand that when they started doing it backwards, then Clinton actually gave a big one, almost 2 million acres, for the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. Anyway, well, look what's happened. I mean, do you see the land grabbing? And then you got the Zion National Monument, which becomes part of Zion National Park. It took a few years, but we ended up from 16,000 acres up to, 143,000 acres now in Zion National Park. Well, what did the new monument contain? And I have a, let's do this. If you could, I don't think there's enough for every individual, but if you'll take one for every couple. What is I don't think most people understand the boundary. What was Zion National Monument number 2? Where was it exactly? Where are the boundaries for it? And I think if we'll get that passed out. Oh, now I don't know what we're doing. You know?
There you go.
Okay. All right. If you get this, I should have probably had a slide of this, but you'll see the Kolob section on the northwest, and then you'll see a section between what was the Zion National Monument 2 and Zion National Park, a section between, it's basically where the road runs from between the two volcanoes, Fire Pit Knoll and the others, where the road to the reservoir turns right and goes up through the hills. It's where the West Rim Trail, the area towards the West Rim Trail, those connections were made. And then, surprising, there was a strip of land to the south that went all the way down to Crater Hill. And you know where Crater Hill is? You're almost a Virgin. It's just east of Virgin a little bit. There's about a 2 or 3 mile strip that went way south. So it's very interesting. If you look at the map, I think you'll start to see that. If you look on there where you see the lines, the dark line should be the Zion National Monument, and then Zion National Park was the other one in 1937. And that's something that I did not know. And by the way, I cheated. I tried finding it in the national park stuff, and I found the best place to find it is in National Geographic. And the issue was January 1954. They have a perfect map, and it's one of the very first descriptions of the Kolob Canyons for people. As I say, yes, there were things done in 1867 and 1874, but it was 1954 when National Geographic made it what people wanted to go see. And this is the fingers part, as you can see. They decided to do it north of Taylor Creek. They said, we need to include Camp Creek. Now, why do you need to include Camp Creek? The picture tells you why. On the, that's an 80-foot waterfall. And it's the very, very northwest corner of present-day Zion National Park. And it takes, I'll tell you how many people I've seen there in 30 years that I've been going to see it, or more. 10, maybe. They don't go, and I don't know why. But I think the people who made it part of the national park or the national monument in 1937 understood it needed to be there. And that's, by the way, they're both there. This one here, you can see some people. This one, that was not the last time I was there, but the second to last time I was there. I was there in January of 2025. And guess what I saw? I'd seen ice off of the cliffs before, a couple of times, but this one was solid ice waterfall. 80 feet of ice. You can walk behind that ice fall. I didn't do it that day, and I'm over 80. It took me 6.5 minutes to get there. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? It really is one of the spectacular places and I've been going there forever. The third picture, this one, is the upper fall on Camp Creek. There's another probably 30-foot fall. Maybe it's only 25 feet. I'm not sure. On upper Camp Creek, that's a little harder to get. I used to do it a lot. I've only done it once since I moved, maybe twice since I moved down here in 10 years ago or so. And the other interesting thing between that upper fall and the big lower fall, if you do nothing but just go see the lower fall, it's an incredible thing to see. It really is. By the way, don't do it now because we've had the driest winter we've had for I don't know how long. It's been really, really dry. And the water is, I don't think there's any water running right now. So this is only a waterfall that goes from mid-March to mid-May usually, but not this year. So you probably can't find anything. Anyway, now you sort of see why I loved it. By the way, I used to go from Cedar City down to do Camp Creek and Taylor Creek, 6 waterfalls in 2.5 hours. I'd get in the vehicle, drive down, take people, see 4 waterfalls on Camp Creek and 2 waterfalls on Taylor Creek, and be back home in 2.5 hours. And this one's also really easy. The first one is Lower Taylor Creek, and that's a grandson of mine who's about 6 feet high. He might have only been 5'10" there, which gives you a pretty good idea that the waterfall is about 10 feet, maybe 11 feet high. And it's a beautiful little fall, and it takes you maybe 10 minutes to walk to. Okay? I'll tell you how to get to both of them, then you can do it next year. So don't do it. You can go this year, I guess, to see if you really want to do it. But there won't be any water now. It's completely dry coming out of Camp Creek. Go to exit 42 like you're going to New Harmony. All right? If you're going down to Taylor Creek, and I got to say something about the waterfalls. Going to Taylor Creek, and I better check and see. Are we out of time? Well, getting close. Well, anyway. Ask me if you want to know. I can show you. By the way, the second waterfall has been changing quite a bit. I call this the John D. Lee waterfall because when John D. Lee described his showers and stuff when he got to Taylor Creek in 1857, this is where he was. These falls, and they've cut back in the cliff, so it's not as quite as nice as it is. But they were still running this year. There were still pretty good water running through these in March and April. This is at the top, near Spenlove Knoll. The beehives looking south and the ones north are very close, and they're easy to walk to too. I walked over to these with my son in February because we've had such a dry year. And you can see this is one of us, and I don't know if it's me or a grandson, but I mean, these are places that old people can go see. Okay? All right? I mean, seriously, they are remarkable. This is Crater Hill. This one's even easy, except the only thing you worry about is when you drive up to Crater Hill. What you do is you go to Virgin, and then as soon as you go through Virgin, the first road that goes left, and I forgot the name of the road, it drives up, and there's camps there for everybody. I mean, it's beyond where those camps are, but there's one really narrow road. It's a good road, but it's so narrow that if you meet anybody coming down it, it's also extremely steep. It's not very long. It's less than a half a mile long, but there's no room to pass. I'm literally no room to pass. So I don't know what one would do if you meet somebody on it, because I don't know what I'd want to back down. It's windy, so I don't know if you want to go uphill backwards or downhill backwards. I don't know which way is the best way to go. So be careful, watch before you go up. But Crater Hill, 600 or 700 feet high. It was in the Kolob Canyon, the Kolob, or the National Monument number 2. And it's clear down by Virgin. And it's the bikers, if you're a biker, you've probably been around this. But it's a beautiful volcano, and even best seen from south of the Virgin River at the... One other historical note, in 1993 or 4, which year? We had a flood at Taylor Creek. What happened is the winter before, they had a landslide in one of the... I think it was the North Fork. There's 3 forks of Taylor Creek. I think the North Fork had a landslide in it. But it might have been the middle, but I think it was the North Fork. And it dammed off all the water in the canyon. And 1994 was a pretty good water year. And the water backed up and backed up and backed up. And then guess what happened? On a beautiful, sunny, warm evening, it just broke the dam. The water broke the dam and came down Taylor Creek. No one was in it at the time. People didn't know about how beautiful it was. It came down, and 10 feet of water went across Interstate 15. And it was a pretty... Well, the flash flood in the Kolob section, it's a remarkable. We can find the date for you. I probably need to get through it. The Kolob Arch, of course, everybody goes to the Kolob Arch. Some are saying that it's the biggest one. Cattlemen knew about it early on. William Flanagan, you may know about the Flanagan Arch up in the canyons above Cedar City. Flanagan was searching for it in June of 1922, I do know that, but he didn't find it. Gregory knew about it when he wrote the book in 1947, And J.L. Crawford, who many of you know, was the first to photograph it. And J.L. went to see it as a young ranger in the late 40s. Two guys climbed it in 57. It was featured in the National Geographic in 54. And by the way, you know what they called it? An unnamed arch. It was still didn't have a name in 1954. And then it became a major site in 1956. Let me go on. Probably the largest, there are three ways to go. All of them are, the first three are really difficult. Kolob reservoir route. That one you have to get permission to go through private property. I've done that one, and Hop Valley is the one a lot of people do, and then Lee Pass from down Timber Creek is the third. Most of you in here probably want to get permission to do the Lower Basin Road and see it. I think it's about right there. You can see it from the Lower Basin Road, but you have to get permission to go through all that private property. And then the best probably way to go is get an airplane and go. Okay. In 1956, the National Park Service decided to do Mission 66 for the 50th anniversary. 1916 was when the National Park Service was created. And Kolob, they wanted Zion National Park, they wanted the Kolob things that were important to them were three. They wanted to go Zion National Monument. Number two ought to be part of the national park. That was the first objective. The second one was to build a road, actually build a road into the canyon, into the Kolob. And the third was to on that road, build a beautiful campground at Laverkin Creek. So those of you who've hiked down in the past, like some of you may have, you can imagine driving down and then having a beautiful, nice campground there for you to stop and see, and then an easy walk up to see the Kolob Arch, by the way. But of course, none of those really happened except which one? Well, the first one went July 1956. The Kolob section was, and they started calling it the Kolob section, and by 56 they were calling it the Kolob Arch too. So, I mean, it was actually, the name was starting to be included. The road wasn't done till the fall of 67, and you know that the others will never be done, at least I'm sure of that. We did add an important thing. Volunteers, like they have here at Silver Reef, created the money to generate and build a visitor center where people could stop and buy things, find out things to do in the Kolob, find out the road's closed before you go up. That's happened a few times. And that was done in 1984. And I have those there. I will just say, my favorite, and I want to honestly tell you, I've been here probably 15 to 20 times with people. The only people I've ever seen at the Kolob Elephant Arch, which is at the very north fork of Timber Creek. You go north, you don't go down, you go into the canyon almost immediately. You got, I think the second one is the second canyon down. Go into the canyon, then go upstream, and then hike up a really steep hill. And this arch, that's about 40 feet, and up and down's about 20 feet, 15 feet of vertical underneath it. So it's a really good-sized arch. The Kolob Arch is bigger, but I mean 300 feet, in the neighborhood of 300 feet. And there's still argument about whether it's the biggest in the state of Utah. It's certainly one of the biggest in the world, maybe third or fourth in the world for sure. And one in Arches will probably fall, and then we won't have to argue about which ones will be. It's getting really close. But on the way down, there's actually a really nice spring waterfall, which I've been there in all times of the year, and it always is running. And it's also the one place that I tell people, do not step onto the stream. It is slick. It's about a 12-foot fall, and that's actually one of my favorite places. And as I say, I've never seen another person that I didn't take in to see that. Now, if you want to see it, you can see it. Go in the morning to the end of the Kolob Road and look down at Timber Creek below you and go up to the north end and then come down at the right angle, and you'll see the sun going through the arch. You can actually see it from the road at the end. There is another waterfall, Bear Trap Canyon. I think they called it Bear Trap because there was a bear they found there once when they walked into it. But we ran into, I had a group of Boy Scouts there once, and we went up and we ran into 4 deer. And guess what? If they're deer, you get out of the way too, because they just went wham. And you know how wide it is? It's from here to the front row is how wide it is. I threw that in because it's too bad that we didn't get Tokerville Falls included in the National Monument early on. This is the Red Butte area, Red Butte Wilderness, and this is somewhere along there is probably where John D. Lee came down. We have Black Ridge Wilderness is the one where the river's in, the bottom where I showed you the petrified wood. And it's very visible. It's not visible by foot unless you're really young and crazy. All right? It's a really difficult place to go. But you can see it from the end of the Smith Mesa. You can look down on it. It's quite nice. Lavercan Creek, I don't know anybody who hikes in Lavercan Creek Wilderness. It's the part you go up when you're going up the Lavercan Creek. And when you leave the National Park now, that's where the wilderness area is. They always take the trip to the side. Bear Trap Canyon has a little section above it they made wilderness, and also Taylor Creek. So, I appreciate you coming. I did write these up in 12 issues with photographs in there's a few things I would change, but they're still pretty good in 2010. And if you go to St. George history and just put Heath and Kolob Canyon, I think you'll get the words that I actually wrote. If you want the actual description of it, it's available. Thank you for coming. And if there's questions, I should leave that open. But it's been a 50-year incredible journey for me, as you can tell.